covering all your favorite parts of the 50-yard fight. This is the Inside the Walls podcast with Zach Heilman and Jim Mernier.
Welcoming in fans of the 50-yard fight, this is the Inside the Walls podcast. Zach Heilman in, as always, at the hosting chair alongside my good buddy, pal, partner in crime, you name it. He is the guy alongside me on the right side of the screen. It is Jim Mernier. Jim, welcoming you on in. New episode again. We're back on the weekly schedule of things, kind of, talking all things National League as we may. And today we are going to be getting a little deeper into analyzing at least players that we'll be watching out for. Before we get into that, of course, before we move on, ask you, how are things? How are you doing? How has your week been, my friend?
Week's been fine. Beautiful weather down here in Florida, especially here in Jacksonville. I know a lot of people around the nation are freezing their butts off, but we're perfect here in Florida.
Nice.
But yeah, we're entering the stage where allergies become an issue for me. There's been pollen everywhere because the trees think it's time to be spring, and we're still about a month away from that.
Excuse me, it's February.
Yeah. But yeah, we're starting to get to a weekly schedule back into things. So starting the season. So episode 83, we've done this for 3 years. So hey, we got to get ready for the upcoming season, and you can't take days off. And with the players are training, we got to be training too. So it's pretty fun, pretty interesting. And hey, let's talk about some football.
Yeah, let's do it. A few things before we also get started, by the way. If you haven't followed us on social media, at InWallsPod, again, at InWallsPod on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Also, if you're wanting to subscribe, we got that big red button below here if you're watching us on the YouTube version, or if you're listening to the podcast and are curious about the video version, go over to our YouTube, click that red button, and as we also borrowed from a show I am on, click that bell. Builds morale, helps us out, gives you a chance to continue to watch these shows, and you don't miss a show. That's the key thing when you hit that bell, too. And in the description, by the way, you want to check out the Discord? We got a pretty good Discord community that's growing as well for Inside the Walls. Talk all things arena or indoor football as need be on that Discord. Recommend you go check that out in the description below. All right, Jim, it's episode 83. We are talking today breakout players for this season. And here's the thing. We got to go through these rosters. We're looking for guys that, maybe they had a season off. Maybe they're new to the arena scene, or at least this league. Maybe they were trying to analyze, for example, like West Texas. That's a new roster that has new guys. Looking for that next Khalil Rashad type of character in terms of, I guess that's the best comparison for you folks out there. So we're going to go through all 7 teams. Jim and I have picked at least one player a roster that we're going to give our takes on breakout players for this season. And if you want to, and especially on the YouTube version, feel free, hit the comments below. Tell us what you think. And on social, tell us what you think as well. We love hearing back from fans on their opinions as well. And let's get this underway in alphabetical order. So the Albany Empire. Let's kick this thing off with the championship Albany Empire. The 3-time champion Albany Empire, back-to-back champion Albany Empire. Some roster changes. A lot of key stars are still here. But, Jim, there are a few people that we have at least pegged that could be in for a breakout season that now might be on this team.
Well, when you look at a championship roster, it's very hard to try to find breakout players on these rosters because usually these teams have a lot of returning stars. How we did our curriculum on breakout players is they did not win an award last year. Our NAL first team, NAL second team, a player of the year, Ironman. So all the big time stars that we last year, they are not eligible for it, but that doesn't mean they will be breakout stars. You expect stars to be stars. I'm saying stars too many times, but get my point. Sure. That's how we're going to do it. And how we're going to do this is I'll pick a player and he pick a player. But you're going to hear some guys here that are very common names in the arena game, but you're going to hear some guys you're like, oh, okay. Why? For me, for Albany, you're looking at this roster. It's very hard to pick players, but there is a family in the Albany area that's going to play Albany football, and his father was a AFL Albany Firebirds vet, David Patton. So I would like to see the breakout kid, Daquan Patton's son, of course, played at Western Carolina University. He was a specialist. He was a speed demon with the Catamounts there in Western Carolina. Go, if you have a chance, ladies and gentlemen, go watch the highlights of him in high school and college. He can take the ball back. And the reason why I think he's going to be a breakout player is because of the Nets and the National Arena League. Kick returners are going to feast on that. And sometimes if Prince wants to rest, or if Hollis wants to rest, you put a kid back there that has history of returning kicks. And I think Daquan could be that player, and especially has a reputation to live up to. Usually sons that follow their fathers in a professional sport, or in this case, a professional team, have a lot to live up to, especially if there's a legacy in any sport, basically. But I like Daquan Patton. I kind of I watched a couple of his highlights to see what he can do. He's a speed demon. He will be in my opinion, he will be the Kylie Rashads, the Darian Thompson, or not Darian Thompson. Yeah, Darian Thompson, the Jacksonville Sharks, and Townsend, the Kellys, the French Chinolas, those guys who were, kick returns when they first introduced the game. And I think he'll be that for the Albany Empire this year. What about you, Zach?
Yeah, well, look, I like Patton. That was actually someone I considered myself. And again, the story, that's a cool little tie-in,
Oh, yeah.
Son to an Albany Firebirds vet. Again, a lot of Firebirds nostalgia around there, as we've seen. They raised the banner last year for their championships. That's a pretty cool story to have, and I hope that he succeeds. I actually am going with someone that is coming over from the USFL as a recent signee for the Albany Empire, and someone that is, he was part of my favorite team, as you can see on my shirt right here, the Michigan Panthers. Joseph Putu, Florida grad there, defensive back, listed as looks to be a specialist at defensive back from at least what is recorded on the roster transaction. And honestly, I think that this is a dude that I thought played some solid ball last year. Look, the Panthers might have been 2-8, but they did have some ballers on there. He did have his moments. I thought last season that I thought he shined, and I think that he has a good chance of transitioning to the arena game pretty well. Not to mention, I think that you're not trying to get him to, he gets to play his natural position. At least if they're going with what is on the roster where he's labeled as just a DB, then he gets to be playing specialty DB. I would not be surprised if he's going to be one of their starting defensive backs come the beginning of the season. And I think he's going to be a possible breakout candidate to get an all-NAL nod. Similar to how, say, Justin Alexander, who basically was up at one of the top higher up leagues, came in San Antonio last year, got his all-AL nod. Now he's over with the Brahmas in town. I could see Putu being that type of guy where, he excels at this level, and should cause some problems for some of the arena teams in this league. At least enough. Scoring still is high, of course, but he'll definitely cause some problems where it's going to be, you get that one or two drives that flips a game in your favor.
Well, you brought up a good point with Jackson. He came down from a upper league, XFL, USFL, came to San Antonio, won the NAL first team. Now he's up at the Brahmas, and he made the roster. He made the team up there in San Antonio. So congrats to him. I like seeing arena guys thrive in upper leagues because I think arena guys get disrespected, and that they're great, talented players. And he had his time to shine. And, Putu, is that what he says his name? Putu?
Yeah,
I don't want to mispronounce his last name. That's why.
It's just Putu, yeah. Putu.
Coming down from the USFL, he could have the same thing. Go to Albany, play good DB, get some more film, shine, and get a chance to get called to the CFL, XFL, USFL, or the big league, NFL. So opportunities, that's one thing I like about the arena game, the opportunities these players get. And when they shine, they either fall in love with the game and stay in the arena, or they get called up and move to the next level. And it's all better. Like I always say, there's a chance, a bigger league, you take it. You don't stay, you don't settle. You want to improve each and every time you get.
Right, absolutely. And I mean, thinking about just Albany's structure they have, they did, like I said, they brought back Dwayne Hollis, who, Hollis is listed this year also as just defensive back on his for specialists. So I'm just imagining that is a pretty formidable, I would say that's a very formidable secondary if you're able to have at least one or two of those guys you can sub out, as that specialty player, because Putu could stay that, and say if Hollis is your starter, Joseph Putu is your, your backup specialty defensive back. you can rotate him out and,
Exactly.
keep a pretty consistent level in the secondary in that
And and that was very common throughout the league. Like you look down in Orlando, you had Brandon Fuentes and Josh Jenkins returning kicks, and Clarence Williams. So you had that rotation back there. And then of course you have Kendrick Ings, Adam Smith, James Summers in Carolina, who did it a couple of times. In Jacksonville, you have Naquan Murray and Rob Jones. So to be a very good specialist, a team that's going to specialize in special teams, you want more than just one returner. You can get multiple back there. That's a win. And yeah, I think that can happen in Albany.
Yeah. Honorable mention I did have before I saw Puto on the roster again. Anthony Cruz. I think he had some flashes in Orlando. I think he could be someone playing that Iron Man setup of receiver linebacker. Could be someone that breaks out or does a great job when needed for filling in for say Hager, Schwartz, depending where he's playing. So that's another one I'm keeping an eye on as well.
Well, the guy that I was going to keep an eye on got called up to the CFL. Speaking of players getting moved up, Vinny Testaverde Jr. got his opportunity in the CFL, so congratulations to him. And that's a legacy player right there too. His dad is a big-time NFL legend in some cities.
You may have heard of Vinny Testaverde Sr.
May have heard. You may have heard the slang his father got in many cities called Interceptor Verdi. He did that 1 year. That's still the reason why he got that name is because he threw, I think, like 34 interceptions or something like that 1 year. 28, and Jameis broke his record. That's right. But yeah, congratulations to Vinny Testaverde Jr. going up to the CFL. Again, opportunities, take them when you get them. But yeah, that was going to be my guy until I looked on the roster. I'm like, oh, he's no longer in Albany. He got up to the CFL. But again, congratulations to him.
Very much congrats to him. Looking forward to seeing his journey in the CFL as it goes down for this season, and find out how things go. But happy to see he gets to move on up. Moving on down, let's go down the list once more. Go to the Carolina Cobras, heading on over to North Carolina in Greensboro to see that roster, and we've again been analyzing some things. And honestly, I think a lot of this comes down for Carolina. Just some of the people that aren't there. Opens up opportunities for others to shine or rekindle some things. I know that, and I think that one of them, to me, who I thought he had flashes, he was a great supporting role character. That was one thing Carolina did great last year anyway, was Jonathan Bain spreading out the ball very well.
Yeah.
But I think that this year, Lance Evans is going to increase his production very much so. With the absence of both Ings and DJ Myers. Myers, of course, went up after winning Ironman of the Year. He is now with the Memphis Showboats in the USFL. And then, of course, Ings, he is over in Fayetteville. So that leaves a bit of a hole for the receiving core to fill. And I kind of got my eyes on Lance Evans, and I think he was a solid DB last year. I think that he's going to be able to get much more receiving production. I think he's got a good chance, getting an all NAL nod in one of those roles.
Well, what's interesting about Carolina's situation last year, their receiving core was loaded.
It was
James Summer, Kendrick Ings, Lance Evans, and DJ Myers, and the list goes on. And you look at their staff now, Lance Evans is there, and another guy, their fifth receiver, Adam Smith.
Emergency quarterback.
And emergency quarterback, yes. Adam Smith popped out towards the end of the year. He played all 13 to 14 games last year, but he was never really like a standout. He did catch a touchdown earlier in the season, but it was Ings, it was DJ Myers, it was Lance Evans who was getting all the shine, all the highlights. Well, it's because Bain was passing the ball. That's what's so great about a quarterback like Bain. He can distribute the ball equally throughout the receivers. I have my breakout player for the Carolina Cobras. If he is shining, like if he's going to make that next step, and Carolina, even though they have, like, you look at the quarterback room now, they signed another quarterback recently. They have some veterans that have been there and done that. So that quarterback is going to be a battle. Carolina can be very scary this season if they can get things going. And Adam Smith will be that guy. I think if he is shining, if he becomes a receiver that's getting 50 receptions, that's pretty dang good. You're going to be clearly a number 2 receiver in the league. I think, like you said, Lance Evans is going to probably be the number 1, maybe if he's going to step up to his role from like number 3 receiver last year, number 4 receiver. He's going to be number 1, and Adams was number 5, so he'll go to number 2. But yeah, if you look past at Adam Smith's season last year, he had 28 receptions, 354 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns, and 13 games played. He played mostly defense and special teams. That's what he did last year. He was always the fill-in guy, and he always played DB. And of course, emergency backup. He also had, I think I read the stat right, like 2 passing touchdowns. So he did pass the rock. So he had to emergency situations, but. Again, Carolina's one of those teams where you look at the roster and you go, they were loaded last year in receiving core. They had a good quarterback. Now they bring in still veterans leadership as a quarterback, and you look at the receivers who will step into place. And we both got 2 guys that if they step up, Carolina could be in a good position this year.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, defensively on the outsides, I think they're locked down pretty well. And quarterback room too in the front 3. I mean, you got Ziegler back. You know, what else can we say about McCollum's legacy in terms of arena?
Yeah.
I actually had some people bring up because they signed, of course, when we did the QB room rankings, they have Eric Amon Caldwell, who is an IFL QB, but they also signed on, I guess, really for some lower college circles, Jeremy Hickenbottom or Hickbottom has a pretty good following from Grambling State. So, you know, fascinating QB battle. I mean, McCollum to me still has the inside track, but that makes me wonder now, you know, who gets the number 2 QB, because I mean, hey, you know, you want to have that security as well, but I think they're like you're talking receivers in particular for the Cobras are going to be what you're watching.
Correct.
I'll throw another honorable mention just because I was curious, and we'll go with who was it there? Darn it, I just lost it. Yes, Corinne Preister from Clemson, who also played at Washington State. He was with the Spokane Shock in 2021, listed as just a receiver. So maybe another option, you know, guy who's had some indoor arena football experience could be someone to watch out for too. And he played with McCollum as well in Spokane.
Well, that's a relationship right there.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So
Well, my honorable mention is not really a breakout player. I just like to share love to this guy, Zach Brown. Give the ball.
Of course.
Give the man the ball. Give the man the ball.
Got to rep our guy Zach Brown on here, dude. I mean that guy is just a joy to watch play, and is also a joy to hear hyping up games. Man, I love his stuff. You know, and I mean, as we know, he'll probably be another candidate for an all NAL nod once more coming up.
Correct.
Without a doubt.
Does that? Yeah.
Without
he does it. It's like a tradition that keeps on giving. You know what he's going to do.
I love it, man. I love it for him. All right, moving on now. We're going to head over to Fayetteville. You know, the in-state rivals, as we're going to be kind of billing them for the Cobras, as we got a few options. Again, Fayetteville, off-season wise, some solid pickups this off-season. They have positioned themselves to where if things play out, you know, if Coach Gunnings has the right setup and, you know, calling correct, they could be winning some games and could be in the thick of things for us, the mid-pack. But hey, things it all depends on how this roster's put together. As we know, Rakeem Cato's on there, Chris Page is on there, you know, you name it. Kendrick Ings is on there as well. As
Trey Long.
Yeah, Trey Long too. And yeah, I'm going to say that, you know, it's hard for me. I was actually going to put this, and it's hard for me, but I'm going to almost cop out here. I hate saying it. But I think Cato breaks out. And the only reason I say this is because I don't think he had flashes last year, but with him being released later, midway through the season, I felt like his potential got capped. So I am picking him simply for the fact that I think he is a breakout candidate for having another year under his belt and going somewhere that he's going to have talent around him as well that he can throw to, you know. I think he's the driving force to what makes or breaks, you know, Fayetteville as a competitor. And I'm going to be the optimist and say he has a breakout season for them.
Well, Cato should. If he's having a breakout season, that means he is single-handedly basically carrying them throughout the year. But for me, I would love to pick Cato, but you took Cato. We basically share the same sentiment for Cato. For me, I'm going to be again Trey Long. The reason why he has experience for the Carolina Cobras. He was always that third, fourth receiver in Carolina. He comes down to Carolina again with Kendrick Ings, so now he's the number 2 guy. If Cato is cooking or is he thriving, I think Trey Long eats on that team. There's a lot of guys on this roster that if you don't know who these players are just based on their names, there's a lot of question marks like, well, this is his first time in the NAL. This is his second year probably. Fayetteville has a lot of guys with a lot of experience in the AAL to the NAL level. So it'll take time for them to gel, but you have experience. You have Trey Long, you have Rakeem Cato, and you have Kendrick Ings in that roster. So you have leadership right there. It's always good to have a quarterback that's played the game. Again, we have seen quarterbacks improve from year 1 to year 2, from looking like they're lost and having disease, fumble, turnover disease to becoming one of the elite quarterbacks. It happens. But look at Cato. He struggled in Orlando, started to get better as the season progressed, just loss after loss, close loss after close loss. Now he's in Fayetteville. He could, be like what Sam Castronova did from Carolina to Albany. He can flip a switch in Fayetteville, and Fayetteville could be a threat in this year in 2023.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think we're leaning on there for sure. And yeah, there's good picks like Trey Long. I can definitely see, and that's going to be crucial. Like I said, getting reliable receiving pieces, and I think also, like we've talked with Cato to me, if he's learned the games and slowed down the game for himself after having another year under his belt, that will go wonders. So he doesn't have to have as many happy feet in the backfield too. Not buying as much time, more decisive, finds the open man. Another honorable mention on the defensive end, and this is one that did get some waves from fans of the old AFL, of course. Milton Williams, who signed on. He had once been with the Brigade. He's listed as a defensive back linebacker on that roster. He was originally a receiver, so interesting if that's the position change they are going with. But someone that at least has experience in this league, I could definitely see him stepping in, being a vet of a former league like that, and possibly making an impact right out of the gate.
Again, like I said, there's veterans all over that Fayetteville team. It just takes time to gel and see how everything works. And again, the better, like what Mason said last week, if you have that middle guy that's solid there, you can really frustrate a team. And Mason even said, if you're deep in the middle, from D lineman to your middle safety or their third DB, you have a good team. And we don't know, but possibly we could see Williams approve and Cato. With expansion teams, it's very hard to find out what they can be until about 2 or 3 games of the season until you realize who they are. So
brand new roster and everything. It's kind of funny because like I guess this is what I'm curious. This is a bit of a skew while we're at it because we've talked. Would you rather be West Texas or Fayetteville? Like, would you rather be the signing everyone type of team and putting a thing together, or would you rather be West Texas where you can bring your own set of guys in right out of the bat? Maybe you get some signings, but you still want your core.
Definitely West Texas because you already have a core. You already know what you have, and you just basically you're upgrading positions with new signings. That's where you'd rather be. Now, starting from scratch, we've seen teams start from scratch in the NAL in its past and come out of the gate like 2-3-0, bam, 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 and just completely, blow up.
Yeah.
Or you have teams like a great example, the Maine Mammoth. Like no one knew who they were. No one knew who that quarterback was. No one knew who that receiver was. And that receiver turned out to be Devin Wilson. That quarterback turned out to be Jonathan Bain. Yeah. And Maine, started off the first half of the season. I think they were like 2-6 or something, or 2-5 like that. And they finished one game below 500 and missed the playoffs by a game. That was a team built up from scratch. Now, this is unique. A team from another league coming in, already with their core. San Antonio did the same thing last year. San Antonio came in with just, we're going to have our core guys from our league and we're not going to sign anybody.
Yeah.
That's basically, and again, they did what Maine did a couple years ago, took them time. And second half San Antonio team, no one wanted them. Like no, Jacksonville didn't want them.
Mm-hmm.
They had to play them twice. Survived once, got beat the second time. They gave teams a pain in the second half. Now they're coming in their second year. Now they know who their actual core is, and they're just getting better around the team. Yeah. But if I was either Fayetteville or West Texas, I'd rather be West Texas because you've already been there and you've already done that. You're just now in a new league. Fayetteville, you're in new charred territories because this is your first year.
True that. Yeah, chemistry does help a ton, But as we said, definitely something you're watching out for because we got those two scenarios. But I get it. It's kind of like we were talking with San Antonio last year. I think you find your stars, and then you build around those stars with more stars that you can sign on as you grow up, as you grow more into it, as they did. So that'll be fascinating. We'll get to West Texas in a little bit. Right now, let's move down again. I'm going alphabetical by city. If guys can't tell, we're going to do the Jacksonville Sharks. Head on over to Jim's team there in northeastern Florida. So, Jim, I'm going to let you lead this off. This is your team, obviously. Gibson's squad. It's definitely is a mix of a lot of new face, but a lot of new face, but some old friends joining along the way. Who do you have labeled as your breakout star?
As a resident Jacksonville Shark fan, I can't go on without saying at least two guys that may break out. I did call. Remember, we were fast forward 40 episodes ago about breakout player to watch for in 2022. I did say Naquan Murray, and he went on to have a big time season for the Jacksonville Sharks.
Yes.
This guy, me and Zach tried multiple times to try to pronounce this guy's last name. His name is Shakai Hollis or Holness. He's a defense Holliness.
That's how I found the pronunciation.
He's a O-line D lineman. He's more of like an edge rusher. He led the National Arena League last year in sacks until he got hurt. And that was at Orlando. He played for the Predators. Now imagine him in a Jason Gibson defense. And Jason Gibson has had some studs on defense. He's had Corey Crawford. He's had Alfred. He's had guys back there, Marvin Ross, but he played DB. He's coming to a Jacksonville defense. I said Jacksonville's front five was top tier in the NAL last year with the guys they had. And now you brought him in. I think he's going to have a breakout year. When you look on the other side, you have Anthony Johnson. You have Shai Hill on the other side too, D-line. So Jacksonville's defense is like when I talked to Gibson months ago. He says he's building a defense that can contain mobile quarterbacks. Not building a defense that's designed to stop a certain thing. He's building a defense to contain mobile quarterbacks. And if you look at the NAL, there are mobile quarterbacks everywhere. So that's, I think, his strategy.
So I can already think of two, possibly three, depending on the play style of the
Correct.
said man in Carolina. So
yeah, and another guy I think is going to have a breakout year for the Jacksonville Sharks. He's a wide receiver, a tall wide receiver from the University of Troy. His name is Reggie Todd. He was signed earlier this offseason. I've watched a lot of his videos and highlights, and I've talked to Gibson about him, and Gibson loves him. And he's like, he could be that, Townsend that comes out of nowhere, or he can be that Kerry Starks that comes out of nowhere that, thrives under Gibson's scheme. So, yeah, those are the two players in the Jacksonville. And I can't say breakout player in Jacksonville without mentioning actually a guy who I think had a hell of a year in Orlando last year, and that's the kicker, Justino.
Yeah.
He's now in Jacksonville. Now, if Justino brings that same mentality, I think Jacksonville has a good chance. But as a fan, I know this Jim's going to fandom, but Kyle Lee is my breakout player. But keep an eye on both Justino and Reggie Todd.
Oh yeah, I like those choices. I got one that I've been following a little bit. So if you guys haven't heard, there is a league, fan controlled football. Call the shots, call the plays. It's pseudo, I would call bastardized arena football, but I digress. What it does have is receivers and talent, and someone that's been playing there 2 years who I think has really built up his reputation there and is getting his next shot in a higher up league now in the NAL is Jordan Smith, who came from Nicholls State. He apparently was a defensive back that switched to receiver in the FCF. He's had some solid seasons there from what I could tell with the stat wise. Again, it's their style of football is weird and it's not at all real. It's the same style field, but like no kicking, different stuff that doesn't, you don't go opposite directions on the field. Nonetheless, receivers do thrive there. He has been a really good option last year he's actually playing on Marshawn Lynch's team. The Beasts is what they're called. So he's coming over. He's playing as that Iron Man product, which again, his background being a DB fits right into the mold. He's gotten 2 solid years of production as a receiver. That's what I would call an ideal candidate for a quality Iron Man player and someone that I think has a good chance of stepping in and getting targets right out of the bat and making an impact on the defensive side of the ball as well if you get to sub in. So I'm looking for Smith. That's who I'm keying in on. Honorable mention going out to Jabari Gorman, mainly because I think he continues his upward trend that he had with the Empire last year, now on the Sharks.
Well, we've noticed now a couple players coming from FCF to the NAL. And people say, oh, these players won't be successful. Look over, and I want to say Wichita a couple years ago with Trent Edwards. He was a quarterback to play FCF. He goes over there to Wichita, and they were competitive. I think they made the playoffs over there with them. So there are some hidden gems over there. I know there's a lot of people, a lot of original arena people are like, oh, that's just gimmicky. Well, it's like NFL Blitz, but with real people.
Right. It's got elements of the game. It's just weirder. Like, for example, this is the last thing I'll say on it is if you remember the old AFL, the original AFL days, the AFL back in the 80s and early 90s used to have sidelines. Like they used to have legit sidelines. The FCF has that again, which is so disorienting to me because there's still walls. So you can still smack someone out of bounds and they can still get crunched into a wall, which makes me go, why not just build a wall and do what they already do? But I digress. Nonetheless, though, guys like Smith have been getting highlighted. Edwards, like you said, who's been making his own path elsewhere. And I believe the IFL, he's over there. Those guys do ball. So
DeAndre Francois.
Yeah, Francois as well.
Now he's in the XFL. So don't look like fans. Don't look down on the FCF like, and this is an inferior league. There are players there just want to get some film, and they'll move up in the league into an NAL or other arena league or the bigger leagues, XFL, USFL, or NFL. So
yeah, I'm keeping an eye on him. I think he's going to have some good stuff for whoever's behind center for the Sharks.
And what our third co-host, which he's not here this week, he even said that Gibson is the best coach that looks for talent that he's ever been with. Like, if Gibson likes him, and what Mason told us last week, I think he sees something in him. So, again, don't look down, fans. Don't look down on these other leagues because they think they are inferior. There are a lot of talent in those leagues that those players just need time to get some, film and get some time playing so they can move up.
Abso-freaking-lutely, dude. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. Good that he's getting up to a next level here in the NAL. Now we're going to move on down a little bit south of Jacksonville, head on to the rival Orlando Predators here, and talk about the Preds pickups. And this one I'll preference. This is me leading off, and maybe not an apology tour thing, but I will at least say that I've looked into the Preds QB scenario a little bit more. And had some people clarify to me that John Sheehan does have a chance to be a breakout QB option. He had some pretty solid numbers in the IFL for the Green Bay Blizzard. Preds picked him up, and again, they have a ton of receiving talent. Again, we rank them as the best receiving crew in the NAL, and I stand by that mark, by the way. So that being said, I think Sheehan, like I said, we all ranked him we all ranked that QB room at 7 with him being on that room. But I will also put a caveat saying, hey, I will not be surprised if I am eating crow by come mid-season if this guy comes out and slings it like he was doing, because all you need is someone that has solid experience for the Preds, and that offense can fly. They got great talent across the board. Orlando is really poised to make a jump as long as John Sheehan, who is the main QB on this roster right now, if he's the guy, he's got to make that leap. And I'm hoping that if I eat crow because of that, I'm okay with it. That's the thing. Preds fans will be happy that I do too at that point.
Hopefully, they don't have another EJ Hilliard happens to him.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't confirm or deny anything on
Yeah.
that. And there's still some time till training camp. But, this guy, after looking up and getting some people clarifying, hey, this is what he did last year to me again, I'm back. Like I said, I'm kind of backtracking, going, you know what? They might not be as bad. They might not have to worry as much on that position as I thought they would.
Well, I think he's the quarterback that did that 30-yard run at the end of the overtime. Like, he hiked the ball and he was running the circles in the back and he just chucked it up at the end. And I think it ricocheted off the back of the wall. And one of the Green Bay guys caught it. And I think it was like a Hail Mary, but it was so weird. I think that's him.
I believe you are right.
Oh, okay.
I'm not 100% on that thing there.
Again, like we said, their receiving core, you look up and down, it's elite level for the Arena League level.
Right. Sheehan threw 40 touchdowns in the IFL last year, so that's good. That's solid.
You have a decent quarterback in Orlando, above average quarterback in Orlando. That's an 8-win team because of that roster.
Correct.
Period.
I mean, yeah.
And again, like we said about Albany, it's going to be hard to find breakout players on these teams where you have guys who are coming back from injury. I could say Brandon Fuentes is my breakout player. He broke out last year and he got hurt. I could say Josh Jenkins is a breakout, but you can't say he's breakout because he's broke out the last 2 years.
Yes.
You can't say Lonnie Outlaw because he broke out 2 years ago with the Columbus Lions. And you look at this team, and then you go, what about Dangerfield? Well, he broke out with the New Jersey Flight. What about Larry Beavers? Well, same thing. You look at that team, and you go, who in the heck can I – well, do I want to go D-line? Do I want to go Daquan Murray? Do I? But you just look at this team, and I found one receiver on this team who – started to do it, Brett. He opened the door, said, hey, I'm here, but the door closed because he had other ventures last year. And that is, again, wide receiver Prince Shinola. He then, I think, went to San Diego, and I think he tried to attempt to get into the USFL, I think, last year, but decided to stay down and with the Strike Force, if I get that correct.
Yeah, he was with the Strike Force, and then he was in both draft pools for the USFL and the XFL.
Then he came back
this past year.
And he came back to the NAL again. Like we stated last year, Orlando had his rights. If he came back to NAL, he can only go back to one team. I think he'll fit fine. I think he has a breakout year. But guy, again, semi-breakout year to watch for. He's coming off of injury. If this guy's cooking like he did last year, look for Brandon Fuentes to – if he shines, Orlando's in great position. Like, Orlando's one of those teams you look at, like we talked about with Carolina last year. Like, their roster is loaded. There's a couple pieces that need to be, switched or mixed, and they can really accelerate. That's going to be a question. Does Sheehan step in and become that quarterback that they need to really spark something? So it'd be something exciting. But again, like you mentioned before, after I did our rankings and power rankings and started doing the numbers, I look back at that roster again, look at the players. I'm like, yeah, they're still number one team. And I know we're considered talking heads in the business, Arena League. Sometimes talking heads have a non-biased opinion about rosters throughout the leagues. And I still believe no matter what, match player by player, Orlando has the number one receiving core in the league right now. Yeah. Look at the roster. Are they the best team in the league? Don't know. That position group, yes. And I look at Larry Beavers, Tyrone Laughinghouse, Lonnie Outlaw, Shinola, Brandon Fuentes, Justin Jenkins. The list goes on and on and on. They're 6 to 7 deep, and that's very hard to do in an arena football. And no matter what league it is, it's just very difficult to do. Very talented team in Orlando. So yeah. But yeah, my secondary breakout player would be Brandon Fuentes, because I want to see if he recovered from his injury. If he's 100% Brandon Fuentes, I think that's going to be a deadly secondary as well.
Yeah, Herky Walls has a lot of talented pieces that he has in that roster. execute your rookie season as a head coach there, and you could be taking the Preds back to the playoffs. That is one team that I think has the most potential to make a year-over-year leap to us is definitely the Orlando Predators. Going to be, I think Preds fans should be, I think we are hoping it's going to be a good season for them. That's what I'm trying to say. So I think it's going to be good for them.
Oh, I think it's they're going to be much improved than last year.
Yes. I think you're absolutely right.
Remember, they did go through an injury bug last year that really deflated them.
Fuentes being out did not help the cause whatsoever for that.
And they were doing, musical chairs with the quarterbacks for 3 or 4 weeks. And by the time they got to stay with Cato, they finally got better, but they were so far out of it by then. It just like you get a win maybe, and then they go on like a 4-game losing streak. I think they ended the season on like a 5-game losing streak, but those losses, they weren't getting killed. It was just close losses. They were playing competitive football. It was just it took too long for them to get organized. And by the time they did, it was almost a little too late. But you look at their schedule, they have to win that home game early because they got that long road trip right in the middle of the year.
Right.
Then they get a nice extended homestand at the end of the year. So if they can get to the homestand in the second half of the year, they can feast, especially with that roster.
Yeah. I think you are on to something. All right, guys.
Probably.
Leading off here, the 2 Texas teams. We're going to kick off with San Antonio, going over the Gunslingers over at the Freeman Coliseum. As we know, our good friend Jonathan Baines over there. Klee Rashad still heading on over there. Philip Barnett's going to be back. A lot of key pieces to that team. One that ended on a pretty strong finish at the end of the season. Just couldn't get all the pieces to work out at the right time and just missed the playoffs. Jim, who do you have as your breakout candidate for the Gunslingers?
My breakout candidate for the Gunslinger, Kyle Rashad. No, no.
You're part 2. He's going to do it even more than
he's going to do it again. Run it back.
Run it back.
I'm going to choose a guy who's been around the league a while. He got buried in the depth chart, I want to say, in Albany last year, Arthur Hobbs. I think he can become a clear-cut star in the San Antonio this year. I think his veteran mindset is something that San Antonio, I think, will thrive on and need. As you know, San Antonio was that team that no one wanted to play last year towards the end of the year. And I think if they had more veteran leadership in the back end, I think they would have been a more of a playoff contender. Even though they were playoff contenders, they would have been more in the mix than they were. But I think Arthur Hobbs, I think he was a player that shined at moments last year in Albany. It's just that the talented roster that Albany had last year, there's just not a lot of places for him to, take over. But I think down in San Antonio, he could be the star player that can have the breakout year. And also my secondary guys show love for the kicker, Drew Pearsons, I think, is the other breakout player for the San Antonio Gunslinger. I almost said the Galaxy. Who the heck are the San Antonio Galaxy?
San Antonio Galaxy.
The San Antonio Gunslingers. But yeah, I think Arthur Hobbs is a breakout player with the kicker. Guys should love the kicker sometimes. But yeah.
Hey, I dig it. Hobbs, like I said, I think he's in a position where he's going to have a good spot to lean on and get more production. Like I said, last year he had a bit where he was kind of put back towards, at least preference, other players were put in front and they were gearing for a championship in Albany. To me, I'm going with a guy that was with them last season for their first year, Cody Brooks. I think that, the fullback linebacker for the Gunslingers, I think he has potential to break out. Had he had a few starts here or there last season. I think listing him as fullback, I think you're going to see him get a little bit more production this year. And he was flying. I remember him flying around quite often, at least for the Gunslingers last season, where I think he can have a little bit more emphasis on the defensive end of the ball. Otherwise, I'm looking for Thornton Chandler, who at Tarleton State, defensive back, who's a rookie coming in for just the DB position.
Nice.
Yeah. Pretty cut and dry there.
Well, we can go easy. Breakout player Jonathan Bain, breakout player Phil Barnett.
That would be cheating if I said Jonathan Bain.
Yeah, Kyle Rashad. Yeah, okay. But San Antonio, like we mentioned before, they lacked experience earlier last year, and once they started gaining experience, once they started settling down, they were getting better, and that's when we saw players like Kylie Rashad rise, Creamer rise, Cody Brooks at times last year, and that's when you saw Robert Kent really step up and calm that offense down. And Shaw, have corrected it and turned the team around. They were at 1.0-5, I think, last year, and then they finished with 4 wins. So they did enough to turn around the season. Now let's just see if they can get out of the gate, and except for a sluggish start, get out of the gate hot, and see if they can not just be a team that's outside looking in, but be one of those teams that's in the tournament come August.
I would say they're another one I'm pretty confident with some of their pickups that you'll be talking about them possibly.
Mm-hmm.
Playoffs are going to be pretty competitive this year. Just a lot higher, even a lot higher talent floor to begin the season than last year, in my opinion. Gunslingers aren't playing catch up. They're going to be ready to go day one, and that fan base will be ready to go day one too.
Yes.
I highly suspect that home opener for them is going to be loud and rowdy, the way that they ended the year. So can't wait to see what the Gunslingers fan base brings to the table. And let's wrap things up with the new Texas NAL team coming in, the West Texas Warbirds. Remember, undefeated West Texas Warbirds technically in their franchise history. So this is had to tout that coming in. Fascinating stuff. And they got some pretty solid talents on this roster too, new and old. As we already know, Kerry Starks is over here on this roster. They signed Daniel Smith just recently to QB as well. So they got people that are going to make an instant impact as well. They have Svontae Davenport as well, who's on there, 2017 second team All-NAL defensive back. My guy, though, is one I was looking at West Texas, like we were talking about, similar to how San Antonio came in last year. Who's that dude that's going to come in and be that star player that was on the roster from prior iterations? And my guy is Jalen Childress. 5'7" receiver DB. Dude's a little speedster, had impact plays pretty much at least every game last season that I could find on West Texas's roster. I see him as very much a Khalil Rashad archetype. I think he can be that dude that makes you miss on the turf, makes you look kind of silly, finds those alleyways, and blows by you for a deep bomb down the right or left sideline. He's my candidate right now. Like I said, some of the videos highlights and write-ups I've read from games, he does make an impact every single game, and I very much suspect he will be too. His size, people will question, but as a receiver, I definitely think he holds up his end of the bargain, and he will surprise some people.
For me, to have a breakout player, you got to have a new player, and the new player who just recently signed is Daniel Smith, quarterback. He does have some history in the National Arena League. He played 7 games last year with the Columbus Lions. He threw for around 750 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. He came in and really, I want to say, settled down Gibson's offense. Back then last year, it was completely a carousel of quarterbacks that went through Columbus. Mason Espinoza, Darren Daniel, Danny Southwick, Darren Daniel. Then it was him. Daniel Smith came in to finish out the year before Mason came back towards the end of the year. I think this could be Daniel Smith's team. I think he's talented enough to take over and become the head guy in charge. And for a team that has a lot of new guys and new faces for the NAL, a veteran like Daniel Smith coming in and settling down a team entering a new league could benefit West Texas, similar to what Robert Kent did with San Antonio. So I think that is a good possible chance for West Texas if they want to get off to a good start. Especially you want that veteran type of quarterback go up against a veteran type of team led by a coach that's been there and done that in Gibson in week 1 when the Sharks go visit them to start the season.
Yeah. I think that's also a good option, man. And I mean, like West Texas, like I said, you're going to be analyzing a lot of, either new faces or at least ones that played previously. Like I said, you're very much this year, we're trying to treat them like the Gunslingers, where keep an eye out, try and dig back and see who's going to be that guy. They
Mm-hmm.
still have J-Ru Campbell on that roster as well, but like they've bolstered up their QB room, by the way,
Yeah.
with outside talent. Besides Smith, Chris Barrett, who's been in several other smaller and indoor leagues as well, has experience too. So they're getting a pretty veteran indoor QB room set up too, with guys that have played this system. So Coach Tate has a good reputation out there. I'm looking forward to what they can put out there. Again, it's going to be a really competitive year. I think looking across the board as the season's gone on, we had our earlier opinions on some teams that didn't have certain pieces filled. It's getting harder to decipher who's going to be the weaker of the 7 teams in this league as the days have gone by. Because there's been good additions across the board through the last 2 months.
Of course, and you're going to expect some more signings like that over the next couple of weeks as training camp nears. We enter March. We're basically in training camp, and season starts the first week of April. So we're getting to we're getting to crunch time when the season begins itself.
Yeah.
And it's going to be for people who are being reintroduced to the sport. This is similar rule. This is the same rules that you've known before. You're going to have 7 teams. You're going to have original names here, and you're going to have team and players that you'll remember. And you expect that you'll see some familiar faces in different places, but you'll see the teams that you expect to shine. But yeah, in this league, it's going to be like we have question marks everywhere. It's still in this league. Can Albany three-peat NAL champions? How is Carolina going to rebound from last year? Is San Antonio going to make that next step? Is Jacksonville going to reload? Is Orlando that one player away from being a really contender? And of course, expansion team Fayetteville, what are they? A lot of those questions are going to happen. But with the show coming to this end, we did do something last week that ruffled feathers around the league. From out west, I've seen Kerry Starks make comments. I've seen Alani Outlaw make comments. I've seen a couple of players from Albany make comments. I've seen it. That's the one thing, the reason why that we do these things called power rankings. And again, a lot of the players I've seen post stuff like, man, these guys are acting full. They don't know what they're talking about. We're not doing power rankings based on one player or based on positions, because it was an overall stat that we were doing. In our final power rankings, how we did it, we did each group. We did quarterback room, wide receiver room, DB room, or wide receiver, DB, O-line, D-line, linebackers, running backs, special teams, and we crammed it up all in there. And we did a point system where the first place team got 10 points based on me, Mason, and Zach's numbers. And the last place team, 7th place team, only got 1 point. So all the points manufactured and came together and created the final ranking of the preseason power rankings. We will do an updated power ranking maybe 2 weeks before the season. So we have this is the preseason power ranking. And then when the season begins, we're going to do something unique. We're going to do a weekly power ranking like we did last year. But we're not doing all 7. We're going to do top 4, our power 4 ranking. So it'd be more intriguing, more interesting how the rankings goes, because it's 7 teams in the league, and showing the team who's 7th place throughout the year is going to be ticked at us. Just ask the San Antonio Gunslinger fans last year, why are we still down here? Well, you haven't done anything. And then they end up finishing, I think they finished 5th in the power rankings last year, or 4th.
My way of thinking of this is, think of it like college football, where you might be, we're given votes, and we just essentially, that's our top 4. So, moving forward, that's what we'll do just for that. I mean, and again, it's, like I said, I feel like sometimes we get people that feel like, oh, you're disrespecting. Well, no, you got to, I mean, if people like these rankings, we have to put someone at 7, 6, things like that. So I feel like this is the best middle ground. You can then argue among the 3 that aren't there themselves who might be that lower, but that's just how we're doing it moving forward.
But speaking of the final power rankings, for the ones on YouTube, it's on the screen right now. For the ones who are listening to podcast platform, this is how it follows. In first place with 91 points is the Albany Empire. Second place is the Jacksonville Sharks at 71. Third place is Carolina Cobras at 68. Fourth place is San Antonio at 62. Orlando at fifth at 51. Six is West Texas with 34, and 7 is the Fayetteville Mustangs with 31 points. If you look at that, ladies and gentlemen, you can tell between 2 and 4 of those three teams are so close to each other in the rankings. And if you look at all of our position and how we did our rankings and position power groups and power rankings between groups, you could tell how like it was similar between 4 teams that kept flip-flopping. That's why the poll was like that. So the Albany Empire will enter the preseason before camp as the number 1 team, like they should. They are defending champions. But again, number 2, number 3, number 4, that is Jacksonville, that is Carolina, that is San Antonio. Those 3 teams are going to be a mix in there. And the pesky Predators right there at number 5. So there's going to be that classic term I use on past shows. If you remember last season, the muck. The muck will return again to the NEL again, which would be, depending on how big the muck will be this year, will determine how the season is going. With that, wrapping up, ladies and gentlemen, like we said earlier in the show, if you're going to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, that's at InWallsPod. On YouTube, it's simple. Just look Inside the Walls Podcast. And speaking of that, I know you've noticed if you're watching on YouTube, we've just passed a milestone on the podcast this year, and I think it's pretty cool. Inside the Wall podcast has passed 15,000 downloads. We have reached all 50 states, 17 countries. We have been ranked 4 times on iTunes as the top 300 football podcast. Remember, we're an arena football podcast, and we're ranked in the top 300 against NFL podcast shows that consist of ESPN, Fox, name brand shows. We were in there 4 times. Yeah, I'll take my 285, my 290, and the highest ranked we've ever been was 211. I'll take that any day of the week. But that's because of you, the listeners. Also, based on iTunes, we are the most downloaded arena football podcast in 2021 and in 2022. That's 15,000 downloads. I want to just say thank you to the fans and the listeners. We're entering our 3rd season, so this is our 3rd year doing this. And it's, an honor. We took over a mantle or a position that was left behind by some, and me and Zach basically said this sport deserves coverage. This league deserves coverage. These players deserve coverage. And we took that. And I would just say to the football, the community out there from Arena, a community that, has been through the trials and tribulations these last couple of years with all these leagues. Thank you for having Walls Pod as one of your desired podcasts to listen to for arena football content. I really appreciate it. And thank you for allowing us to do it. Thank you for listening to us banter about the National Arena League. And I really, again, thank you to the fans who've listened. Our most listened city. I do have that stat. You won't see it on the screen. I have it right here. Forgot to add it. The most listened city for the Inside the Walls podcast will surprise people.
Okay.
Columbus, Georgia was the number 1 city. Number 2 was the Albany area. Depending on where you are in the country, Albany is how it's pronounced. Number 3, this is a shocker. This city does not even have a NAL team. They're not even on the East Coast. Right after Jacksonville, at number 4, San Jose.
Really?
Was the most listened to, the top 5 in our charts.
That's fascinating, given San Jose's history with the sport.
Yeah. So apparently there was an arena football fan that liked our podcast who just listened to us. So most appreciate it. And number 5 was Orlando. They're up our top 5. Then 6, 7, 8, all of those are former San Antonio's there. Also, Greensboro's there, so I count that as Carolina too. So there's a mixture, and a couple from Boston. So Massachusetts fans probably. So again, without you, the listeners out there, me and Zach launched this podcast to just have fun. And 3 years later, 15,000 downloads / views on YouTube and everything. It's an honor. It's a tribute. We've been here for 3 years doing it, and now that the community is coming alive again, we're still here, and we're happy that you're coming back. And let's enjoy the ride, because we got football this year in the NAL cover, and let's see what the future holds for us. But again, we couldn't do it without you, our listeners, and to the fans of the 7 organizations and 8 organizations that were in the National Arena League that have supported us over the last 3 years. I really appreciate it.
Let the good times roll, as they say. It's going to be another great year in the NAL with, again, the original arena setup back for the first time since 2019. It's going to feel real great, and we still we still got to wait a little bit, but it is right around the corner, man. Less than 2 months out. How crazy is that?
Less than 2 months out. So you can honestly say this, ladies and gentlemen, you can watch the whole entire, not really the all entire XFL season, but a lot of it before the arena starts. And when we start the first week in April, and we end. I still haven't got the confirmation yet if it's still August 12th weekend or the August 18th weekend. But my bet is still August 18th with the bye week between the playoff game and the championship game. So you're going to have arena content from us every single week until at least past the NAL championship game in August. So yeah, it's exciting. So remember us, follow us on Twitter. We're very active on Twitter, very active on Instagram. And to our new subscribers, thank you for subscribing. To our new followers on all of our social media platforms, thank you. Really appreciate it. There's a lot more to come. Without you guys, we won't be doing this here. And without Zach, I won't be doing this here. But thank you for making Inside the Walls podcast your most listened to arena podcast over the last 2 years. Really do appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. And I guarantee the same for Zach.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, I have been blown away by the feedback on this show and the people I've gotten to meet along the way, and to do this show with you, Jim. That's also a nice reward I get to have doing this. You know, someone that has as much passion for this sport as I do. That's something you don't see. You don't get to do that every day with someone. So thank you for that too. And again, thank you to the fans out there. With that being said, I think that's about going to wrap it up for our latest episode of Inside the Walls. Catch us next week. We are going to be doing team breakdowns one by one as we lead closer to the season. That should begin next week. We are in the process of building that up. So stick around, as again, we're back to week by week basis of shows. So you're going to get us every week from now on, dropping, well, really towards the end of the week as we go along. So catch us on the next one in episode 84. Thanks for tuning in. Follow us on social at InWallsPod. Subscribe to this channel. Click that bell. Build yourself some morale and help us out too. And catch you later, everybody. Stay tuned until the next one about the 50-yard fight and about this great league that is bringing back arena football.
Covering all your favorite parts of the 50-yard fight. This is the Inside the Walls podcast with Zach Kyleman and Jim Bernier.